Good morning, my grade 11 history geniuses. Today I want us to look at Ghana as a case study of nationalism. It's an essay. You have to read your focus textbook, but I suggest that you study the Oxford textbook and that you use the notes that I gave you. In those notes, you'll see it starts with a poem, I Know a World. Then there are definitions, and near the end you'll see there's numbered bullets and points, and that tells you what the main things in the Oxford textbook are to make up your different paragraphs. Let's have a look at a very important concept. You have to understand that Ghana was the Gold Coast. That was its name when it was a British colony. After World War II, there was a great emphasis on the rise of human rights, and that was because World War II taught the world that human rights violations should never be tolerated, and that people have a right to call a place home, to have national pride in that place, because if Jewish people had had a home of their own, they wouldn't have experienced the discrimination of Hitler. And so that led to calls for decolonization in Africa to prevent human rights violations and for people not to have a place that they could call their own and have a national sense of identity in. So it's the Gold Coast, it's a British colony, and it becomes known as Ghana. So in terms of definitions, it's important that you know what nationalism is, what Pan-Africanism is, what colonization is, and that you can define who Kwame and Nkrumah is. The reason for that is that the line of argument is often the role of Pan-Africanism or the role of Kwame and Nkrumah. So that's what you're looking for. You're looking for Ghana as an example of African nationalism or Pan-Africanism. So we don't write the essay just about Ghana. We write the essay in terms of it being nationalism that led to this change from being the Gold Coast to Ghana. So what do we cover? In the beginning, we'll have an introduction, and that introduction, depending on the topic, will either define who Kwame Nkrumah is or define African nationalism. And you'll see in your Oxford textbook that when you page through it, there is a lovely introduction right there. On page 158, that gives the context of any essay topic, and from there you would then explain either what Pan-Africanism is or African nationalism or Kwame Nkrumah. But that is a brilliant start to this essay. Then you'd have a look at your influence of Pan-Africanism, and there you'll see that you cover a couple of people, just briefly, and then very importantly, you look at what was the Manchester Conference. So there's two aspects to that paragraph. Then you look at the roots of African nationalism, and for the roots, you could break it up into two paragraphs because there's some information and then there's stuff about the cocoa strike. So it can either be one or it can be two, roots and cocoa strike, as one or two paragraphs. After that, you're looking at the impact of World War II, and this is very important because of World War II, there was a rise in African nationalism. And then again, you can break it up into two paragraphs because there's information about the Second World War, and there is information about after the Second World War, the growth of resistance. So you could break that up into two paragraphs. Then for paragraph 7, you could look at Kwame Nkrumah and his political party, the Convention People's Party, and the role that they played in decolonization or independence. And then for 8, you look at Kwame Nkrumah becoming the Prime Minister. And then 9, independent Ghana. But when you get to independent Ghana, be careful, because what happens is there's information, then there's lots of sources. So all those sources, don't forget this important paragraph on page 167. And basically that tells you that in 1966 there was a military coup, which is the overthrowing of the government by the military, by the army, and Kwame Nkrumah was no longer the leader. And I've always found that quite sad because here was this hero of the struggle leading the country to independence, but unfortunately it wasn't all romance and beauty and perfect. There will always be challenges in any given situation, and Ghana showed such promise, being the first African country to gain their independence from colonialism, but it wasn't smooth sailing. There were challenges, and Kwame Nkrumah was overthrown by 1966. So that is the essay that you should be working on, Ghana, a case study of nationalism. Excellent. Have a great day.